The shuttle dropped through the clouds of Earth, and through the window I could see a green and blue world spinning. Below me, it looked soft, fragile, like something I could break with one strong word. That was what my mother had told me before I left home. She had placed her cold hand on my shoulder and said, "Crush him slowly, my daughter, smile while you do it. My name is Vela, and I was sent to marry a human king. I am not human. My people come from a star system far away, a place of white towers and silver oceans and ships made of living crystal. We have ruled 47 worlds for longer than humans have known how to write. I'm the third daughter of the highest throne in our empire. I was raised on cold marble floors, fed on lessons of power, and taught that love was a tool, never a feeling. 2 hours before the shuttle landed, I had read the file on my future husband one last time. His name was Adrian Vance. He was the new ruler of Earth and a small group of human colonies. He was 34 years old and they're counting. He had been a soldier once before the crown. He had short brown hair, dark eyes, and a face the analysts called ordinary. There was one photograph of him laughing, and I had stared at it for a long time, trying to find the weakness in his smile. My mother wanted his wormhole. That was the truth, the only truth that mattered. Earth controlled the only safe path to the outer reach, and the outer reach was full of metals and worlds and power. We could have taken it by force, but force is loud, and the galaxy is watching. Marriage is quiet. A marriage is patient. A marriage lets you steal a kingdom while the husband sleeps beside you. I was the knife in the gift box. I knew it. I had agreed to it. The shuttle landed with a soft hiss, and the door opened, and the air of Earth hit me. It smelled like rain and something green. I had never smelled rain before. On my home world, the air is filtered through silver filters and tastes like nothing. I almost stopped walking just to breathe it once more, but a princess does not pause, so I lifted my chin and stepped out. There were thousands of humans waiting. Soldiers stood in clean white rows. Music played. Cameras floated in the air. Flags moved in the wind. And somewhere a child shouted my name in a language I did not speak. I walked forward in my crystal armor, the kind that catches the sun and throws rainbows into people's eyes, and I told myself again the words my mother had said, "You are a sword in a soft sheath. Cut him slowly." Then I saw him. He was standing at the end of the long red carpet. He was smaller than I expected, not weak, just smaller. He wore a dark blue uniform with very few medals, even though I knew he had earned many. His hands were folded in front of him, calm, like a man waiting for a friend. When I came close, he did something I did not expect. He bowed, not the small bow of a king greeting a foreign princess. He bowed in the old style of my people, the way a younger noble greets an elder. His left hand crossed his chest, his right hand open to the side, his head lowered exactly to the right angle. It was perfect. It was a bow that took years to learn, and I had only ever seen it performed at funerals on my home world. I stopped breathing for a moment. Then he spoke in my own language, in the clean, high tongue that only royalty uses. "I know why you are here, Princess Vela. I will not pretend that I do not, but I would like to try to make this bearable for both of us." His voice was quiet and a little tired, not sad, just honest. He looked up at me, and his dark eyes were Not the eyes of a fool, and they were. Not the eyes of a hunter, they were. Something else, something I did not have. A word for I wanted to laugh, I wanted to say something sharp. I wanted to remember my mother's voice and call him. A small king of a small world, but my throat was strange and my heart was beating too fast, and the only thing I could do was bow back in the proper human way because I had studied that. To improvidence I said I am honored. It was the first lie I told him. It would not be the last. The wedding happened 3 days later. I will not describe it in detail because to me it felt like a dream of someone else's life. I wore white, he wore black. We stood under a sky filled with hanging lanterns and a million quiet faces. I said the words, he said the words, he placed a ring on my finger, a simple gold band with no jewel, because he had asked me what I liked and I had said, without thinking, something quiet. I had forgotten my own answer until I saw the ring. He had remembered that night after the long ceremony was over, after the dancing and the speeches and the loud human music. He walked me to a private room in the palace, the door closed behind us. I turned, ready for whatever came next, ready to play whatever part was needed. He stood at the door far from me, his hands behind his back. Vila, he said softly, this room is yours, mine is across the hall. We do not have to share anything you do not want to share, not now, not ever. The marriage on paper is enough for the galaxy. I stared at him. Why, I asked. He smiled, a tired small smile, and he said, because I think you are a person, even if your mother forgot to tell you so. Good night, princess. Then he left. I stood in that beautiful, empty room for a long time. The lanterns outside the window swayed gently. Somewhere in the palace, music was still playing. I touched the gold ring on my finger and I felt something very strange happen inside my chest, something I did not have a name for. I shook it off. I sat down at the small desk by the window and I opened my hidden device. I began my first report to my mother. He is weaker than expected. I wrote, kind, easy to read. The marriage will give us access to the inner palace within 1 month. I read the words back. They were good words. They were exactly the words my mother wanted to hear, but my hands were still shaking and I did not know why. In the morning, a small tray of food was waiting at my door. I almost did not see it. There was hot bread and fruit I did not recognize in a tall glass of something dark blue. I picked up the glass and smelled it. It was Ven tea, real vent tea from the leaves of the silver trees of my home, not the cheap synthetic kind that humans make from chemicals. Real vent tea is hard to get. It does not travel well. It costs a fortune to ship across the stars. I had not tasted it since I left my home world. There was a small folded note beside the glass. I opened it. I asked, your old governess what you used to drink as a child. I hope I got the right one. Welcome to Earth, Adrian. I sat down on the floor right there in the hallway. I did not mean to. My legs simply did not work for a moment. I held the glass in both hands and I drank the tea and it tasted like home and I felt something hot and confused press against the back of my eyes. A spy does not cry over tea. A spy notes the cost of the tea and writes it down as a sign that the target has resources, or a sign that the target is trying to charm her, or a sign that the target is foolish with money. I wrote none of those things in my report that night. I drank the tea and I told myself it meant nothing, and I went to find my husband to thank him, because that is what a good wife does in public. He was in a small garden behind the palace. He was kneeling in the dirt planting something. He had taken off his uniform jacket and rolled up his sleeves. There was soil on his hands and on his cheek. When he saw me, he stood up quickly and tried to brush himself clean, looking suddenly embarrassed, like a boy caught playing princess. He said, "You said my name yesterday." I told him. He paused, then he smiled just a little. "Vela, why are you in the dirt, husband?" He looked down at his hands. "I plant something every spring. It is a habit. From when I was young, it helps me think. You are a king. There are gardeners." "There are," he agreed, "but the gardeners do not need me to do their work. I just need me to do mine." I did not understand him. He confused me at every step. On my home world, a ruler does not touch dirt. A ruler does not bow to his bride. Ruler does not place tea outside her door with a soft note. A ruler stands behind cold walls and lets others kneel. But he was kneeling, and somehow he seemed taller for it. "Thank you for the tea," I said. "You are welcome. It must have been expensive." He shrugged. "It is only money. You are not." He went back to his planting. He did not ask me to stay. He did not perform for me. He simply turned back to his small green plants and worked, humming quietly to himself. And after a moment, I realized I was still standing there watching him, and I had no idea why. I went back to my room. I sent no report that day. I told myself I needed more information. That was the lie I told myself. The truth was that I did not know what to say to my mother. The truth was that for the first time in my whole life, a person had been kind to me without asking for anything back, and I did not know what to do with that, and I was afraid. The weeks that followed were strange and slow. I attended meetings. I shook hands with humans whose names I did not learn. I smiled at cameras. I wore the clothes the staff brought me. I memorized every door, every guard, every secret passage I could find. I was good at my job. I was the perfect spy, but every morning a tray of food was at my door, and every morning the tea was real, and every evening Adrian asked me with no pressure, no demand, only quiet care. "How was your day, Vela?" And every evening I lied a little less. One night, 6 weeks after the wedding, a guard knocked at my door. It was late. The palace was quiet. The guard's face was pale. "My lady," he said, "the emperor asks for you. There is news." "What news?" The guard swallowed. "A ship has arrived from your home world. Your sister is on it. She says she has come to take you home." I stood very still. My oldest sister, Irish, had never spoken kindly to me in my entire life. She had not come across the galaxy to bring me anything good. She had come to deliver a message, and in that moment, standing in the doorway of a room that was slowly starting to feel like mine, in a palace ruled by a man who planted flowers and remembered tea, I understood for the first time that the plan was already moving. My mother had not waited for me. She had decided I was too slow or too quiet or too soft. The war was already coming, and I had to choose before the sun rose whose side I was actually on. I walked through the long stone hallways of the palace with my heart beating against my ribs like a trapped bird. The guards followed 2 steps behind me. Their boots clicked on the floor in steady rhythm. I tried to think clearly, but my Thoughts were a storm of broken pieces. Irish, my oldest sister, the sharpest. Knife in my mother's drawer. I had not seen her in 6 years. The last time we had spoken, she had told me I was a disappointment and a soft fool, and that the only useful thing I would ever do was lie down quietly in a marriage bed. For the Empire, I remember walking away from her that night and promising myself I would prove her wrong. Now she was here on earth in the throne room of my husband. I reached the great doors of the main hall and I paused for one breath. I lifted my chin. I made my face into the face my mother had taught me, the one that smiles while it watches you bleed. Then I pushed the doors open and walked inside. Adrian was already there. He stood on the lower step of the throne, not on the throne itself, which was a small thing. But I noticed it. He wore a plain dark coat. His hands were behind his back. He did not look afraid. He looked oddly ready. Irish stood in the center of the long red carpet. She was tall, taller than me, in armor the color of fresh snow. Her silver hair was braided in the war pattern of the high houses. 6 of her personal guards stood behind her in a perfect line. Their hands rested on the handles of crystal blades, the ceremonial kind, the kind that meant, "We have come to remind you of our power." When she saw me, she smiled. It was a smile I knew well. It was the smile she wore when she had already decided how a conversation would end. "Little sister," she said in our language. "You look thin," Ivy said. "You did not write." "I do not need to write. I am family." She walked toward me. Her boots made no sound on the stone. She stopped 2 steps away and looked me up and down slowly like a buyer inspecting a horse. Then she leaned close to my ear. "Mother sends her love," she whispered in her disappointment. I did not move. "Your reports have been thin, Vela. Pretty words, no content, no maps, no codes, no names. 6 weeks and we know less than we did before you arrived. I have been careful. You have been slow. There is a difference." Not to Mother. She stepped back and turned to Adrian, and her face changed completely. She smiled at him with warm, false delight, and she spoke in his language with only a small accent. "Emperor Vance, forgive my private words. To my sister, it has been so long. Family, you understand." Adrian nodded politely. "Of course. Welcome to Earth, Lady Irish. I have prepared rooms for you and your guards. Will you stay long?" "A few days only. I have come with a small gift from our mother and a small message." "I am eager to hear both." Irish walked to the center of the room. She lifted one gloved hand, and one of her guards stepped forward and placed a small silver box on the floor between her and Adrian. She opened it carefully. Inside was a flower, a single white flower with petals like glass. It was beautiful. It was also, I knew at once, a death sentence. That flower grows only on the highest cliffs of my home world. It is called the moon lily. It is given as a gift only once in the history of our empire, and it has the same meaning. Every time it is given, it means we have already decided. It means what comes next is not a request. It means prepare your sons for the grave. Adrian, of course, did not know any of this. He stepped down from the platform and walked over to the flower. He knelt to look at it. He admired it honestly, the way he admired everything beautiful, and he said, "It is wonderful. Please tell your mother I am grateful." Irish smiled wider. "I will tell her exactly that." Then she looked up past Adrian directly at me, and her eyes said, "Watch what I do." Next, the message is short. Irish said, "Our mother asks for the joy of having her daughter home for one season. Visit, a small thing to celebrate the marriage on our soil with our customs. Before the long years of partnership begin." Adrian rose to his feet. His face did not change. "That is a kind invitation," he said. "Naturally, Vale may choose for herself." "Naturally," Irish said. Her voice was sweet as poison, but surely she would not refuse her own mother. The whole room held its breath. I understood the trap with perfect clarity. If I went back to the home world, I would not return. I would be locked in a quiet tower, and a body would be sent to Adrian in a beautiful coffin, and the empire would mourn, and the wormhole would be the price of compensation. If I refused, Irish would have her excuse. The small public insult, the broken family honor. The fleets were already moving. I knew it now. I could see it on her face. Either way, the war was coming. The only question was how soon. "Sister," I said softly, "walk with me in the garden. We have so much to catch up on." Irish's eyes narrowed slightly, but she nodded. The perfect public sister. Of course. I looked at Adrian. He was watching me carefully. I tried to send him a message with only my eyes. I do not know if he received it. I think maybe he did, because he gave me the smallest nod, the kind a man gives when he has decided to trust a person against all common sense. Irish and I walked out into the garden. The sun was setting. The sky was orange and pink, colors my home world never showed. Somewhere a bird was singing. We stopped beside a small pool of clear water. Her guard stayed back at the door. Mine did too. We were finally alone. She turned on me. "You have lost your spine, little sister." "I have lost nothing. You drink his tea. You wear his ring. You smile at his cameras. I am playing the part. You are forgetting the part." I looked at the water. Reflection of the sky shimmered on it. I could see my own face there, blurred and uncertain. "How soon?" I asked. She paused. "Fleet. Yes, 3 weeks, maybe 4. Mother is patient when she needs to be, and impatient when she can afford to be." And me? Irish looked at me for a long moment. Something in her face shifted. For one breath, she was not the cold sister of the cold empire. She was the girl I had known when we were children, before our mother had finished shaping us. Her voice was almost gentle. "You come home with me on the ship. You live. Mother has even chosen you a new husband, a good one of our own kind. You will be a widow with dignity. You will not be blamed. And if I do not come home," she turned back to the water, "kindness was already gone. Then you die with him." I closed my eyes. I thought of my mother's cold hand on my shoulder. I thought of the silver towers of my home, the marble floors, the great cold halls. I thought of every lesson I had been taught about duty and blood and obedience. Then I thought of a man kneeling in the dirt to plant flowers. I thought of a glass of Ren tea outside a door. I thought of a quiet voice saying, "Good night, princess." I thought of a ring with no jewel, because I had said I like things quiet. I opened my eyes. I need one night, I said, to say goodbye properly, to make him trust me, to give you what you need before we leave. She studied my face. She was looking for the lie. I had been raised by the same mother. I knew exactly how to hide it. One night, she agreed slowly, "In the morning, you walk onto my ship of your own will in front of his guard, smiling. We leave Earth at first light." Agreed. And the codes, what codes? The palace. Defense codes, the fleet positions, the wormhole gate sequence. You will leave them in a hidden file before you go. My team will collect them after we are gone. I almost laughed. She had not changed at all. You will have them, I said. She smiled. She believed me. Why would she not? I had been the obedient sister my whole life. We walked back to the palace together. We were arm in arm like the loving siblings we had never been. Inside the hall, Irish announced loudly that I had agreed to visit home, and Adrian thanked her warmly, and the small group of advisors clapped politely in Irish, and her guards were shown to their guest rooms. The doors closed, the hall emptied, the lanterns dimmed. Adrian and I were left standing alone on the stone floor. He looked at me, I looked at him. You are not going with her, he said quietly. It was not a question. I shook my head. Just once. He let out a long, slow breath. Vela, what is happening? I walked to him. I took both his hands. They were warm and a little rough from the gardening. I felt that strange thing in my chest again, the thing without a name, the thing that had been growing since the night of the tea. Adrian, I said, I have to tell you everything, and we do not have much time. We did not sleep that night. I took him to my small private study, the one I had pretended was for personal letters. I opened the hidden compartment under the desk. I showed him every report I had written, Snort's every photograph, every map, every name I had collected. He read them slowly. He did not interrupt me. He did not show anger. When he was finished, he looked up at me. His face was tired and pale, but his eyes were steady. I knew. He said softly, you knew not the details, but the shape of it I have known since the day you arrived, Vela. Why do you think I gave you so much freedom? Why I let you walk anywhere, talk to anyone? I had two choices when our marriage was arranged: refuse you, and the war begins now with bombs. Accept you, and either save you or be ended by you. I picked the second. I knew the risk. Why? He smiled, small and tired. Because the first night you arrived, you looked at the rain on the shuttle window like you had never seen anything so beautiful, and I thought, that is not a knife, that is a person. And a person can choose. I started crying. I had not cried in years. I did not know I still knew how. I sat down on the cold floor of the study and I cried like a child, and Adrian sat down beside me, not touching me, just there, just present, the way a person sits beside a friend at a hard funeral. When I was done, I wiped my face. I felt empty and clear. 3 weeks, I said, maybe 4, 600 warships, the full Crystal Armada. They will come through the deep route, not the wormhole. The wormhole is the prize, not the road. They will hit Mars first to draw your fleet, then Earth. He nodded. He was already thinking. Irish will leave with her guards in the morning, he said. She must leave thinking she has won. She must take the codes with her. What? Give her the codes, real ones, but the wrong version. The old defense pattern, the one we replaced last spring. Let her bring those home. Let her mother build her war plans around lies. I stared at him. He was already at war in his head, and he was good at it, and I had not seen this part of him before. And me, I asked, you walk her to her ship in the morning, you smile, you wave, you say goodbye like a loving sister, you stay, and when the fleet arrives, my dear wife, you and I will be ready for them together. Together, I repeated, like a word I was learning for the first time. He looked at me for a long moment. Vela, he said, whatever happens next, I want you to know one thing. From this moment you are not a spy, you are not a piece on anyone's board, you are not a daughter of an empire, you are my partner, you are my wife, and in 3 weeks we are going to teach your mother what humans are like when their home is threatened. I had heard speeches before, grand ones. Mother had given 1,000 of them, but I had never heard a man speak like this. Not loud, not boastful, just absolutely certain. Outside the window, the first light of morning was beginning to touch the sky. I stood up, I straightened my dress, I wiped my face one last time. Snorts walked back to the guest wing, where my sister was sleeping, and I knocked on her door. She opened it. Already dressed for travel. Sister, I said sweetly, I have the codes. Are we ready? She smiled. I had finally become the daughter our mother had always wanted. It was the most dangerous performance of my life, and it was also the last lie I would ever tell her. The shuttle carrying Irish lifted off from the palace grounds at dawn. I stood on the cold stone platform in a long blue coat, my hands folded in front of me, and I waved to her as the ship rose into the pink morning sky. The thrusters glowed, the wind pushed my hair back. Adrian stood beside me, his face calm and royal, the perfect picture of a husband saying goodbye to a sister-in-law. The shuttle climbed and climbed, and then it was a small bright dot, and then it was gone. I let out a breath I had been holding for hours. It is done, I said softly. It has begun, Adrian corrected me. We walked back inside. What followed were the strangest 20 days of my life. We told no one was coming, not the cabinet, not the senators, not the public. Only 6 people in the whole world knew the truth. There was Adrian. There was me. There was Admiral Holt, a quiet older woman with iron in her voice, who commanded the home fleet. There was a man named Peter Walsh, the head of the Secret Service. There was a young engineer named Lily Brooks, the brightest mind in the orbital defense program, and there was a sharp old advisor named Henry Cole, who had served 3 emperors and trusted no one except Adrian. The 6 of us met in a small windowless room below the palace twice a day, every day for 20 days. I will not pretend knew everything about war. I did not. My education had been in politics, in poison, in the slow killing of conversations. I had never planned a battle in space, but I knew my mother. I knew how she thought. I knew every general she trusted and every weakness she refused to admit, and I poured all of that knowledge onto the table. Every map I had memorized, every name I had hidden in my head for years. Admiral Holt listened to me the first day with her arms folded in her face hard. She did not trust me. Why would she? I was a foreign princess who had been spying on her country 6 weeks ago. On the second day after I described the exact battle pattern my mother used in every major war for the last 50 years, she looked at Adrian and said, "Your wife is a weapon, sir." Adrian smiled and said, "She is a partner, Admiral." The Admiral nodded once. I had earned a small piece of her respect. The plan came together slowly. Mars was the bait. My mother's fleet would strike Mars first to draw the human ships out into the open. Adrian agreed not to take the bait. The civilian colonies on Mars were quietly evacuated under the cover of a routine maintenance drill. Lily Brooks built a network of small unmanned ships, cheap things made from old freighters, and filled them with sensors and reflectors. From a distance on a scanner, they would look like a real fleet. We placed them in orbit around Mars. We let them shine like targets, the real fleet, the small but stubborn human fleet, hid in the dark dust of the asteroid belt, engines cold, lights off, waiting. Meanwhile on Earth, every shipyard worked day and night. Adrian did not announce a war. He announced a renewal program. Old freighters were pulled out of retirement and refitted. Mining lasers were turned into weapons. Ordinary cargo ships were given thick armor and quiet engines. Humans built almost nothing new. They simply made the old things deadly. I watched them work and I learned something I had never been taught. My people, the Crystal Empire, built things to last forever. We built ships that were beautiful, perfect, polished, expensive. We built them in slow factories over many years. We were proud of them. The humans built things to survive tomorrow. They patched, they welded, they taped. They argued, they ate cold food at midnight in the shipyards, and they laughed at jokes I did not understand. And they fixed problems no engineer in my empire would have even noticed. They were ugly, they were fast, they were ready. On the 17th day, while I was walking through one of the orbital docks with Adrian, an old mechanic named Walter, a thin man with white hair and oil on his face, came over to us. He did not bow. He did not call Adrian sir. He just walked up and clapped Adrian on the shoulder and said, "We will be ready, kid. Your dad will be proud of you." Adrian smiled and said, "Thanks. Walter, how is the leg?" "Old like me. Still works." Then Walter looked at me. I tensed, ready for cold eyes, for the suspicion I had earned, but Walter just nodded at me like I was one of his own and said, "Ma'am, you tell us anything else about how those crystal ships fight, you tell us straight away. We will fix it." I did not know what to say, so I bowed in the human way, and Walter laughed, and then he went back to his work. When he was gone, Adrian said quietly, "Walter taught me how to fix engines when I was 12. He has no respect for the throne. I love him for it." I understood slowly, every day a little more. These people were not held together by fear. They were not held together by oaths. They were held together by something I had no word for, something warmer than duty and stronger than law. They worked together because they liked each other. They followed Adrian because they had decided he was worth following, and they could undecide it any day, and he knew it, and he treated every single one of them as if the undeciding was always one breath away. That I realized was why he was strong. A king who is loved chooses his throne every morning, and so do his people. A queen who is feared sits alone on her throne forever, and so does her empire. On the 19th day, the long rain scanners picked up the first ships. The Crystal Fleet had arrived 3 days early. I felt the cold of it in my stomach. My mother had pushed her schedule forward. Irish had returned home and told her something that had made her impatient. Perhaps Irish had not been entirely fooled. Perhaps Mother had simply decided to surprise us. It did not matter. The clock had jumped. Admiral Holt looked at her screen. She looked at Adrian. "Sir," she said, "it is time." Adrian stood up from the table. His face was tired but very steady. "Let them come to Mars," he said. "Let them strike the empty fleet. We will know who they are by how they kill the ghosts." We moved everyone to The command ship in orbit, it was an old vessel called the Constance, the largest battleship Earth had. 40-year-old thing with new guns and patched walls and a crew that knew her every breath. I had never been on a warship before. The corridor smelled like metal and coffee and human sweat. Snorts. The crew nodded at us as we passed, quick and respectful but not slow. Everyone had a job. We arrived on the bridge. Adrian took the central seat. I took the seat beside him. Admiral Holt stood at the main display. Her arms folded. The screen showed the empty space around Mars. The fake fleet sat there glittering in the dark, looking real. Then the crystal ships came out of jump. They appeared in clean, beautiful rows. 600 warships, the pride of my mother's armada. Their hulls glowed soft white in the sunlight. They were the most elegant weapons ever built. I had grown up watching them on parade. I knew the name of every captain. I knew the song their engines played as they accelerated. They opened fire on the fake fleet. Mars decoys lit up like 1,000 small suns and burst into harmless flashes of metal and gas. From the crystal commander's view, it must have looked like a complete victory. Their first volley had ended the war in seconds. I could almost hear my mother laughing in her throne room. Thousands of light years away, the crystal fleet held position. They scanned for survivors. They found none. They turned in beautiful formation toward Earth. Adrian stood up from his chair. He walked to the main communications console. Open a channel, he said. All frequencies, every translator, every language. The officer obeyed. Adrian spoke into the microphone, and his voice was sent across all of human space and into the ears of every crystal captain in the fleet. This is Emperor Adrian Vance of the Sol Concordance, to the commander of the fleet from the Crystalline Dominion. I greet you. You have just destroyed a fleet of empty ships. You have killed nothing but lights and metal. There were no people on those vessels. Mars is empty. The colonies are safe. The trap you came to spring has already closed, but it has closed on you, not us. There was silence on every channel. Adrian continued, calm and clear. I am giving you one chance. Turn your ships around. Return to your border. Tell your mother of empires that the humans are not the small, soft creatures she imagined. Tell her that we have been at war with each other for 10,000 years, and that we have only ever lost to ourselves. Tell her that any species that has survived its own children is not afraid of yours. I could not breathe. You have 10 minutes to decide. After that, every ship still pointed at my home will be answered out. The channel closed. The bridge was silent. Admiral Holt looked at Adrian. That was a long speech, sir. They needed a long speech. Adrian said, some of them are listening. We have to give the listeners a way home. I understood then what he was doing. He was not just fighting my mother. He was offering my people a door, a way to stop, to think, to remember that they were also persons. Under their armor, some of them would take it, some would not. The minutes passed. 6, 7, 8. On the 9th minute, 3 crystal warships turned. They broke formation. They jumped back toward home space. Then 4 more, then 11. But the rest, the great mass of the fleet, kept coming. I leaned forward in my chair. I knew which captain was in the lead. I knew his name and his pride and his loyalty. He would not turn. He had been my mother's pet for 30 years. He would have to be stopped. Adrian looked at me. His face asked the question without Words, are you ready? I took a slow breath. I had grown up on the silver floors of an empire that would have killed me for what I was about to do. My mother's face flashed in my mind, cold and beautiful and disappointed. Then I thought of Walter, the mechanic, clapping his hand on Adrian's shoulder. I thought of the engineers who had patched ships through cold nights. I thought of the children in the streets who had shouted my name when I arrived, not knowing I had come as a knife. I thought of a glass of venti outside my door and a ring with no jewel because I had asked for something quiet. I leaned forward to the communications console. Open a new channel, I said. All crystal frequencies, high command priority. Lock my voice signature so they know it is really me. The officer hesitated and looked at Adrian. Adrian nodded once. Open it, he said. The channel opened. I spoke in the high tongue of my own people, the language my mother had taught me when I was small, the language she had used to tell me I was nothing more than a sword. This is Princess Valor Inaris of the Crystalline Dominion, third daughter of the High Throne. I am alive, I am free, I am here on earth, and I have not been forced, and I have not been harmed, and I am speaking now of my own will. I could feel my mother hearing this in real time far away. I could feel her face turning to stone. My mother has lied to you. She told you the humans are weak. They are not. She told you they took me. They did not. She told you this war is for honor. It is not. It is for a wormhole. It is for greed. It is for one woman's hunger. My snort's voice was steady. I had not known I had this voice in me. To every captain listening, I say this: you are not slaves. You are not pieces. You have eyes and minds and hearts. Look at the planet you are about to attack. Look at the people you are about to harm. Ask yourself in your own quiet if this is the kind of war you want carved on the stones of your house. Then choose as I have chosen and come home with me into a new kind of empire if you have the courage. I closed the channel. The bridge was silent for a long moment. Nothing happened. Then slowly, one by one, more crystal ships began to turn. 15, 20, 30. The lead captain held his line. He kept coming. With him about 300 ships still flew toward Earth. Half my mother's fleet had heard me and chosen. The other half had heard me and refused. Adrian put his hand on my shoulder for one breath, then let it go. Admiral, he said, it is time. Admiral Holt smiled. Very small, very dangerous. Yes, sir. The human fleet rose from the dark of the asteroid belt where it had been waiting in silence for 20 days, and the real battle began. I had never been in a real fight before. Not in person. Not where the floor shakes and the lights flicker and 100 voices speak over each other in calm, clipped sentences that almost hide the fear underneath. I had read about wars. I had studied old recordings in cold, quiet classrooms. I had heard my mother describe campaigns over dinner the way other mothers describe weather. None of it had prepared me for the bridge of the Constance in the first hour of the engagement. The screens were filled with light. Small dots moved against the black of space, each dot a ship, each ship full of people who were breathing and afraid and brave. The human fleet rose from the asteroid belt in clusters of 3 and 4, not in clean rows like the crystal armada. They came in like a swarm from 100 different angles. No formation a textbook would recognize. The crystal captain, the proud old man who refused to turn, must have been confused for the first time in his career. His ships were trained for elegant battles, for graceful arcs and predictable lines. The humans did not fight that way. They came in close, they twisted, they used the asteroid field as cover, they struck and ran and struck again, their old patched freighters with mining lasers welded to the hull stuck between crystal cruisers like fish between whales. Admiral Halt called orders in a calm, low voice that never rose, not once, not even when the first human ship was lost. Wing 4, break left, cover the Endeavor, she is venting. Yes, Admiral. Wing 7, hold the line. At marker 8, do not chase. Yes, Admiral. A small light on the screen flickered and went out. A ship was gone, a captain I had met 3 days ago, a young woman who had laughed when I had said hello in her language, was gone. I felt something heavy pressed down on my chest. Adrian, beside me, closed his eyes for one breath and opened them again. He said nothing. He simply remembered her in some private place inside himself and went on doing his job. I understood then why his people loved him. He did not perform sorrow, he carried it. The battle was not quick, it went on for hours. The lead crystal captain, finally realizing his elegance was a weakness, tried to gather his ships into a tight defensive ball. It was a mistake. The humans had been waiting for it. The moment the crystal ships closed up, 3 old freighters drove straight into the center of the formation with their engines wide open, ramming the heart of the cluster. I gasped. I could not help it. They are giving up their ships, I whispered to Adrian. He did not look at me. His eyes were on the screen. They volunteered, he said quietly. Last night, all 3 captains I asked for 2-6 raised their hands. I had to look away for a moment. The crystal formation broke. Their command ship was crippled. The lead captain, the proud old man, was alive but cut off. His remaining ships were scattered, confused, leaderless. Admiral Holt did not give them mercy. She did not give them harm either. She simply pressed in, surrounded them, and held them open a channel to the remaining crystal ships. Adrian said, "Open, sir. This is Emperor Vance. Your command ship is disabled. Your formation is broken. You are surrounded but not under fire. Power down your weapons. Lower your shields. No further harm will come to your crews. You have my word." There was a long silence. Then one by one the lights of the crystal weapons dimmed. The glowing pods of their main guns went dark. Their shields fell. The proud old captain, my mother's pet, sent a single short message: "We surrender. May your honor be lighter than mine." The bridge of the Constance went very, very quiet. Then, slowly, a small sound began. It started with one officer, a young woman at the navigation station, who let out a long, shaky breath. Then another officer, an older man at the weapons console, lowered his head into his hands. Someone made a small laughing sound that was almost a cry. Admiral Hall closed her eyes for one full second, and her lips moved, and I think she was saying the names of the lost. We had one. We had one. I sat in my chair, and the wave of it came over me all at once. I started shaking. I could not stop. My hands trembled in my lap. My breath caught in my throat. I had not slept properly in 3 weeks. I had not eaten in a day. I had betrayed my mother in front of 47 worlds. I had ended the empire I had been born into with a single speech in the language she had taught me. Adrian saw my hands. He did not touch me. He did not make a show of it. He simply reached over and put his coat over my shoulders quietly the way a man covers a friend who has fallen asleep, and he went back to his work. I sat under his coat and I cried soundlessly, and no one looked because they were all too busy living through their own first quiet minute after the long noise. That was the day the long war ended, not because of weapons, because of a princess who told the truth and a king who listened, and a fleet of ordinary humans who refused to die quietly for a cause they did not believe in. The peace took longer than the battle. I went home once to my mother's palace 6 months later. I went under flag of truce with a small human guard on a slow human ship. My mother received me in the great hall of silver where I had grown up. The hall was emptier than I remembered. Many of her courtiers had quietly left. The galaxy had heard my speech. The old captains who had turned home had told their families the story of what my mother had tried to do and what her daughter had done. Instead, it spread like fire through dry grass. She sat on her cold throne. She looked older. Her hair was still silver, but her face was tired in a way I had never seen. You have come to gloat, she said. No, mother, to take the crown. No, mother. Then why? I knelt before her. I had not knelt to her in many years. I bowed my head to say goodbye properly. She looked at me for a long time. You were the soft one, she finally said. I always thought your softness was your weakness. It was my strength, so I see now. She looked away. The light from the high windows fell on her face, and for a moment, just one, I saw something underneath the cold queen, something tired, something almost sad. She had spent her whole life being the sharp blade her own mother had shaped. She did not know how to put the blade down. She did not even know she was holding it. Will you ever forgive me? She asked very quietly. I did not answer right away. I thought about it honestly. I do not know yet, I said, but I will try slowly over years. That is the most I can give. She nodded once. It was in her way the most honest moment she had ever shared with me. I stood up. I walked to the door. I did not look back. I knew somehow that I would not see her again, and that this was the right ending for a story that had needed one for a very long time. She abdicated 3 weeks later. My eldest sister Irish took the throne, to the surprise of every history book in the galaxy. Irish turned out to be a quiet, thoughtful queen. She wrote me a letter once, short and awkward and honest. She apologized for the things she had said to me when we were young. I cried when I read it. I wrote her back. We are still writing each other. Letters are still awkward. They get a little less awkward every year. The wormhole stayed open. The trade routes opened with it. Humans and my people began to mix in small ways. There were students, there were marriages, there were arguments over poetry and food and music and old grievances. There were stories told in both languages. There was a slow, ordinary, unglamorous peace, which I have learned is the only real kind. Adrian and I went on ruling side by side year after year. I would like to say it was easy. It was not. There were hard nights. There were arguments. There were moments when my old training came back and I tried to manage him like a piece, and he, gentle as always, would look at me and say, Vela, just talk to me. And slowly I learned how talking honestly is a harder skill than spying. I had to start from the beginning. We had 2 children, a boy and a girl. The boy looked like his father, dark-eyed and quiet, with a small smile he saved for the people he loved. The girl looked like me, silver-haired and tall, but she had her father's laugh, which was the best thing about her. We did not raise them to be weapons, we raised them to be persons. I made every choice with that one rule. Every time I felt my mother's voice in my head telling me to harden them, to sharpen them, to teach them to win, I closed my eyes and remembered a man kneeling in a garden, planting flowers, for no reason except that he liked them. Then I made the other choice. The years passed, 40 of them in the human counting. My people live longer than humans, so I knew from the beginning that I would one day have to do the hardest thing I had ever done. Adrian grew old, his brown hair turned white. His hands, those rough, warm hands that had held mine so many times, grew thinner and more careful. He walked slower, he smiled the same. He never lost the quiet kindness that had stopped me in my tracks on the day I had arrived. As a knife, the day he died was a soft one. There was sun, there were birds in the garden he had built. The grandchildren were there. He was very tired. He held my hand for a long time. He said my name just once, the way he had said it for 40 years, with that small smile. Then he was gone. I will not write what I felt. Some things are not for the page. I will only say that I sat with him for a long time afterward in the quiet, and I held his hand until it was cold, and I thanked him over and over in our private language of small things, for the tea and the garden and the ring with no jewel, and for every gentle thing he had ever done. That was last year. I am old now. The empire I came from is gone, and the empire I joined is doing well without me running it. My daughter is a fine ruler. She is wise in a way I never was at her age, because she had a father like hers, and she did not grow up afraid. I sit in the garden Adrian planted most afternoons. The flowers he planted on our first morning together are still here year after year. Somehow someone tends them. I think it is a young gardener named Tom. He never speaks to me unless I speak first. I like him for that. People ask me sometimes, scholars and students and writers, what changed me. They expect a grand answer, the war, the speech, the empire that fell, but it was none of those things. It was a man who bowed in the old way of my people on the day I arrived to harm him. It was a glass of real vent tea outside my door with a small note. It was a ring with no jewel, because I had said I like things quiet. It was a husband who knew I had come to betray him and chose every day to set me free anyway, because he believed against every empire in the sky that I was a person, and persons must be allowed to choose. I came to Earth to steal a throne. What I found instead was a small, loud, stubborn species that no galaxy had taught me to expect. A species that builds with tape and welds and laughter, a species that bonds harder than steel and forgives harder than law, a species that has no idea how dangerous it is, because no one has ever taught it to measure itself by anything but love. I came as a knife. I leave as a wife, a mother, a grandmother, citizen, and if there is any other ancient empire out there sitting on a cold throne looking down at these strange small humans and thinking them beneath your notice, listen to me carefully now. You have no idea what you are looking at. I did not either. It changed me forever.